Okay everybody, thanks for stopping by. Today's video is just going to be a real quick follow-up on the King's video that I did the other week, just in relation to the, I guess, the undersized wiring, etc. that I found inside the box that was paired with the lithium battery that I purchased as a bundle. Unfortunately, the feedback that I was getting proved to me that there's a lot of people out there that just don't understand the point I was trying to get across and how that product can possibly be dangerous because of the underrated wire and the possible loads you can put on it when compared up with a lithium battery. Seem to be quite a few people that don't understand the difference between the capacity and the output current rating of the battery.
Got lots of people telling me, oh, I don't know what I'm talking about. It's a 100 amp hour battery, but they're going, no, it's not a 100 amp battery, it's a 100 amp hour. This is correct, but it's rated at a 1C. Now, 1C means a discharge rate. Discharge rate of a 1C means it's the same as the capacity. So if it's 100 amp hours, it means your discharge rate is 100 amps. So people need to learn this, you need to understand this instead of arguing about it.
When I was getting this feedback and people were arguing about the capacity of the battery, etc., and saying nobody's going to use 100 amps out continuous, we're going to do that, we're going to test it. Again, it comes down to that single feed from the battery that feeds everything else. So you've got obviously your two terminals. It does show that those two battery terminal outputs on the top aren't fused, which, as I said in my comments, is not a biggie because ultimately it's the same as if you were to connect direct to the battery and you would have to apply your own safety features there, like put in a fuse or something along those lines. It comes back to the fact that some of the people that are going to be buying this product, these budget products, aren't going to know any better, and they're going to think because it's saying circuit breakers and fuses that they've got some level of protection there. One video I went and watched, the guy was playing with his box and doing his little review of the box, and he said, look, I've got no idea what this wiring does. I've got no idea how this is all connected. And that is exactly the point and why I wanted to share the video. All that said, here's the Commodore. There's my brass monkey 30 compact fridge. There's my King's battery sitting over there in the corner. I've been using it all week without issue. At max, I've been pulling about 6 amps out of it. I've just had a Victron shunt turned up. We're going to connect that up to this so we can do our tests and test it out. And we're going to see if we can put a 100 amp load on it. And we'll just see what happens with that wire. Look, I don't anticipate that it's going to catch on fire and it's going to blow up. But I think that it's going to get quite hot. It may possibly melt some stuff, but we're going to find out. I'm going to grab it out. I'll see you at the back. What we've got is the Victron shunt, the Bluetooth shunt. That's not the one with the display. So what we're going to be able to do is mount this inside the box, and then obviously I'll be able to monitor the input, the output, and then the status of the battery there as well, which will be good. Now, some of the other feedback that I got is this plastic strap here. It's like, ah, mate, that's not meant to be holding the battery down, and it's sufficient for use and all that sort of stuff. Again, one of the other videos I seen when I went and watched it was he put it on, went to tighten it up, snapped first time. Okay, so just to prove a point, I was just trying to crank down on that to pull this lid down. Can you see that? I have a nice hell of a bruise too on the side of the wrist there, but for the people that said plastic clips are good, we just proved that they're not. And we're going to get something else. It's gone back into the shed. Grunt one, this has the metal clip, so this is what should be supplied. So it's not really fit for purpose. Yes, you're not strapping the battery down here, but depending on how you've got this battery tied down, etc., this keeps the lid on, and the lid pretty much keeps your battery in place. So ultimately, you know, if you roll the vehicle or something along those lines, you may have it strapped down otherwise. Typically you'd strap it down over the top, but if you haven't got it strapped down over the top and you're relying on that plastic strap or that plastic catch to hold in your 15 kilos of battery or more, this is the smaller battery that fits in here, if it, you know, and it pushes on this lid, wants to get out, that plastic thing, that little plastic catch isn't holding onto it. And the shunt's going to fit just there with a bit of double-sided tape on it just to hold it in place. literally all we need to do is jump up from the negative onto this, and from here back to that cable that's supplying the power for everything. Okay, so hopefully that light is a little bit better. I've gone and grabbed me stand lights out of the shed. There they are, there you can see them somewhere. Little eco float power on that. Since I've had a number of those Renogy inverters, I've got some additional cables. I think this is probably, I think it might be 4 or 2. I've got a feeling it might be 4. The reason I've grabbed this is because I've got several of these cables made up. Now, because that's a 3000 watt inverter, it can pull up to around about 300 amps. You're probably going to be around about 250, 270. And what they supply with that Renogy inverter is 2 of these cables. So effectively, these should be capable of handling around about 150 amps a piece, which is going to be more than this battery can output. I am going to test that battery because I believe that BMS does let you take around about 120, maybe 140 amps out of the battery until that BMS steps in and says, no, I've had enough. So I believe the 100 amp continuous rating is based on the cells that are in this. And I think, I can't remember, I've seen some of these that had prismatic cells in them, and some of them have been pouch cells. There's been some sort of change in the making. This is the blue top, which I believe is the new one. So again, I'm not real sure. I didn't have a look. I did see pouch cells listed somewhere. This is the lug that they've got this cable terminated on. So this is the cable and lug responsible for feeding that whole box, all the outputs. This is the cable that they probably should have used, capable of handling that current. And can you see the terminal on that? Look at the contact here. Look at the size of the lug that's going to be making contact with the actual battery itself. Can you see the difference in the contact surface here? Look how thin this is. Look how thick this is. The thickness of the terminal itself, the amount of surface area that's physically going to be making contact with that battery terminal. Completely different. We're going to be able to get the standard wires on that shunt, which is what I want to do, because I want to test it as if it's out of the box. So there's no concerns about anything that I've put in. Anything that I put in is going to be size larger than anything that is in there as standard. Now those lights hopefully are working for you, but they're terrible for me because I can't see shit when I'm looking at the camera. So it's a little bit of an extra squeeze with that extra wire and that shunt there. It's not sitting quite as good as I wanted, but again, once we do the permanent install, we do all the tests, I'll lay it on its side, I'll find a better position, probably stick it down the side, I'll make cables fit to length, etc. Let's stick with Kings. Let's go and grab the Kings 1500 watt inverter. I'm going to grab the tow kit induction cooker, and we're going to throw some water on. We're going to see whether we can pull 100 amps out of this battery and what happens to the battery box. Just to prove a point, because I'm not certain about the output rating of this switch here. You can see here, you can see how small that is. I'm not sure whether that's capable of handling 100 amps. I think it's going to be pretty close, but to give you an idea of the look of that, this is a 250 amp rated switch. Can you see this? You see the size of the terminals? Look at this. Can you hear that? That 250 amps. Do you think that is rated at 100 amps? But that's just all I'm saying. Again, it really comes down to what's inside of it, etc. Providing they're making decent contacts, the size of the terminals, etc., etc. But yeah, 250 amps. Don't know whether this is rated at 100. I just don't know. I don't think so. A few people said no. One person said yes. And it's rated then higher than that, they've suggested. So I don't know. These are the cables, single cables that were supplied with the Kings. That's what you've got there. Let me just grab one of the Renegys. And you can see the size different. It's going to be the next gauge up with the Renogy. Hopefully, I'm not sure you can see that. Kings, Renogy, you get 2 of those for twice the size of inverter. So in theory, one set of those should do this. So they could have gone bigger with their cable on their inverter as well. These output lugs, again, are quite small. Some of the feedback that I got, he pointed out that it did actually say in the manual that these aren't fused, and he's correct. There was a warning there saying that these aren't fused. Like I said, the feedback that I had would have been that they go direct to the battery. So if you're going to go direct to the battery, then you would have to fuse that yourself anyway. So these aren't really that different. Generally as a rule, you're not going to connect an inverter up to these outputs. You will go direct to the battery. Okay, so here's the little warning here. You can see it at the bottom here. And it does say, the warning, the positive and negative terminals on the exterior of the battery box are not fused. Ensure that you install fuses or circuit breakers where necessary. The feedback that I got was, conveniently, left that out. Like I said, I'm not some mastermind trying to stitch up kings, trying to confuse people, trying to sell them something else. Just a guy in the backyard playing with the stuff, showing you what I found. So if there's something I've missed, it's just because I've missed it. It's not some sinister plan, right? It just isn't. Feedback that he gave me, it was convenient omission. Did I miss that? There it is. Now it's in the video. But he did go on to say that it states that these are fused, or these are rated at 40 amps. Now, nowhere have I seen that. Again, I asked him for a link. Haven't seen that just yet, so I'm going to assume that doesn't exist. Now, while we are testing this, I don't want to break it because I want to use it. It is fit for my purpose and for most people's purposes. Again, the concern is sold as a bundle, 100 amp hour battery in it, lithium battery with the possibility of putting out 100 continuous amps with cable inside that's not rated to that 100 amps. We just want to see what happens. So camera swap, this one overheated. If anybody tells you that the DJI Action 4s don't overheat compared to the GoPros, full of shit. About 10 of 100, so 10%. Connecting to our shunt, and we are pulling around about 40 amps. Hopefully you can see that. 40 amps, 500 watts. Well, let's just drop that right down to 1. So it's lower setting. We're in about 27, 25 amps. 424 watts we're pulling. So let's just check some terminals, etc. 26. So we're all still ambient. Now, typically, there's a couple of ways you can have a failure that relates to heat. Usually it's a lug, and usually it's a connection, because obviously your connections are where you make connections. You take one point to another point, you're putting them together. And often if those aren't fixed and you haven't got a good transfer of energy, then it can get hot. And often when you see a failure, it's around a connection point. So it's at a terminal because you haven't tightened your battery down. You've got a loose lug in here somewhere where that wire is connected, and because if the energy is trying to get across that point and it's not making a good connection, it makes heat. And often you will find that it's that heat at that lug or that connection point that damages the wire, and then damages the shielding and damages the coating on the wire. It's not very often that you will see wire heating up in the middle unless it is undersized. I'm going to say that I can already feel this wire here heating up. So the first thing I'm doing is checking these terminals, and I'll tell you where I'm getting heat is on the back of this on-off switch. 24.79 amps. Hopefully you can see that. 18, so somewhere between 18 and 25 amps. Hopefully you can see that, because I want to prove a point here. Fine. It's hot to touch. The other side is hotter. Just finding it difficult to get a reading off that because it's shiny. Okay, so just to prove to you that I'm not bullshitting you, because some people are going to call it out, I've gone a couple of contact thermometers, because this one just isn't getting a good read up there. Still showing 29 degrees. That's not 29 degrees. So you can see this. Hopefully you can see that. 52 degrees, 53. I just want to show you something, right? So I'm just going to grab this wire, the negative wire, and give it a squeeze. Not sure if you can hear anything there. I'm going to grab the positive wire, this is where our heat is, and see if you can hear this. Can you hear that? I can physically feel the wires or the strands in that moving. The shielding is getting soft, or the coating is getting soft. Can you see that? So straight away we're having problems, and we're still only pulling 20 odd amps. It is peaking up to around about 30 amps. Our issue here is that switch. It only seems to be on one terminal, so we might have a shit connection. So we'll see if we tighten up. It might be just a connection, so we'll see if we can tighten it up so we can improve things. Right, I was nearly able to put another whole turn on both of those lugs. It's just getting worse. So basically, if you get one of these, and we're only pulling 20 amps, now that is less than what you would be pulling out of one of those Anderson plugs. Now they were supposedly, now they are fused at 30 amps, which is still more than we're currently pulling from this alone. And they go through that switch as well. Still hot, but cooling down. 47, it was actually on 50, but so that temperature is coming down there. Again, keep in mind, we're only pulling a quarter of what this battery is capable of, so we're about to ramp it up. Let's see if we can get to about 50. So what I'm doing is just adjusting the temp on the induction cooktop until I see around about 50. So I'm sitting around about 39, 40. Just knocking it up a few notches at a time. So we're now on setting 14 on the induction cooktop. 56, somewhere between 56, somewhere between 50 and 56 amps. Guess what? Cable's getting hot. Alright, let me rephrase that. Cable's getting considerably warm. 42 degrees, which I can tell you is enough to, yeah, okay, to give you an idea of what 42 degrees feel like. It feels a lot hotter in the hand because it's only 25 degrees out. I would have said it was hotter than that, but to give you an idea of what 40 degrees is, I like to have a hot bath and I like it to be around about 38 degrees. So around about that 40 degrees. So this right now feels like a hot bath. That's the temperature that's in that cable at the moment. We're pulling about 50 amps, 55 amps. Yeah, and those cables are hot, and you can just feel, you can feel it, you can hear it. These big terminals are all okay. I'm a little bit reluctant to touch the terminals on that switch though. It's heating up again. Just show you there, so hopefully you can see that. 60 degrees, can you see that? If everything is connected properly, you shouldn't feel any heat in any of the terminals. Just going to run it for just a little bit longer to get it to saturate again, and then we're going to crank it up. Got to stop doing that. Yep. Alright, these terminals where we've got the lugs connected to are hot as well. We're back to pulling 40, something odd amps, 50 odd amps that we were aiming for. Let's go and turn this baby up. See what we can get out of it, see what those cables do. 83, 79, thereabouts, 84, 82, so we're around about that 80 amps. Just in case of trying to get a good contact point. So that's the terminal that we're connected to, the lug, 66 degrees, 66.7, but we can get 666. This cable here, 48 degrees, so nearly at 50 degrees. Again, I think our induction cooktop is going to back itself off because we're boiling here again. 86 amps, it just peaked to 92. So we're getting close to that 100. Again, need to go and get cool water. Now, I hate the fact that I'm having to give this a reprieve by having to go and get more water, but again, our terminal's there, 75 degrees. Let's just crank it up, let's see what we can get out of it. Now keep in mind, these are open. If we had these closed, they'd be heating up more, I think. Hold 82 degrees on that lug there as well. Alright, let's push it, see what happens. The inverter's doing its thing, it's great guns, 12.3 on the battery. So we've been pushing it reasonably hard. It should come back up once we take the load off. I wish that state of charge would work. I'll have to have a look at that. So we've got 82 amps. We should be able to get well up over 100, but we'll see if we can get it onto the 100. 105, 104. So we're on about the 100 amps. I'll keep that shunt active. Yeah. Shit. Yeah, it's trying to hold that against that cable, but I can't. 56 it was showing, it was going up higher than that, so that's much hotter. Alright, terminals 92 degrees. I think that's sufficient to cut that test off and show you that if that's left to run too much longer, obviously that heat's going to come back, go through those cables, and yeah, you're not holding those, you're just not. Let's make a connection directly to the battery and then see how much we can push that, because I'm curious to see what this battery is going to put out. I believe it's up to around about 120 amps. Often what you'll find is 2 points of failure. Usually it's a terminal, and then that supplies heat back down the cable because you've got a bad connection. In this instance, I believe we're seeing both. I think we're seeing the results of bad connections at these terminals, and we're also seeing the result of the fact that it is under cabled. It just is for that sort of current. Keep in mind the reason we connected to these terminals, and they're still warm. The reason we connected to these terminals was it was the easiest way for me to be able to get to 100 amps. 100 amps is a lot. 100 amps is a fair amount of current, so keep that in mind. It's not going to be easy for somebody to get to 100 amps, but connected to a King's 1500 watt, these cables are hot too, connected to a King's 1500 watt inverter, which this battery is capable of doing.
No, Kings would never tell you to do that. That, you know, you'd have to connect it direct to the battery, etc. So hopefully I've got the clips here. I think I downloaded them. But I then went and found them another number of different videos from the Supercenter official website, where they have connected up a 1500 watt inverter like this with a portable battery box to run induction cookers and all sorts of different stuff, and connected it to this battery box in exactly the same format and the same way that I've done it here.
You could run power tools, you could even run a coffee machine or a microwave. Connecting your inverter to your battery or battery box is simple. Quickly, temporarily connect your inverter to a battery directly or to your battery box terminals. I've made sure the inverter and the battery box are off. Now I'm adding the red wire, then the black wire. Now this is perfect if you just want a temporary installation.
Which means that stop trying to defend Kings when they get something wrong. Look, I'm happy as a pig in shit with this inverter. This is my backup inverter. So I've got a couple of Renogy 3000 watts. When I need something that's under the 1500 watts, I go and grab the Kings because it works, and I'm happy to plug it in and rough it about and throw it around. Still works, had it for years. The battery in here, happy enough with the lithium, doing its thing, working in the back of the Commodore, connected up to the Renogy DC charger. Happily pull this out for when I've got to test other products and stuff and use the battery.
13.16 is our battery voltage. We're going straight back for it, so we are currently at around about 105 amps. Hopefully you can see this on this. I'm really hoping this is all coming out. I don't have to do this again. So 102, 105, thereabouts. 100 amp hour continuous this battery is rated at. Now, there would have been some residual heat from those cables, but I can tell you that this positive terminal is getting a little bit warm. But you know, we're right on the limits of the battery. Still hotter than I would like it. We're at a setting of 62 out of 100. 122 amps we are currently pulling. 122, 143. We'll take a screenshot to prove that. Everything's still functioning. The fans come on in the inverter. Water is now boiling, so we need to go and get some more water. Hang tight. Battery still doing its thing. Battery's coming like a champ. It's the box that we have the issue with, and the box being sold with a battery that's capable of this. So Kings, you're doing yourself a disservice by selling batteries that are so much more capable than the boxes you're putting in. Asking for trouble. Alright, so 100 and, that's been a minute or two. That's been running at that 120 amps. Now it's the BMS that's going to put us on hold when it stops, so see what we can get Hopefully you can see that. And that battery is rolling just fine. I mean, it's taking it. Let's go. Again, that water's heated up straight away. 135, righto, 100%, let's go. 135 amps, 136. Screenshot for prosperity. I would suggest that BMS is probably capable of 150 amps continuous out. But we are now pulling 135.82. Our water is boiling again. You see how quickly that happened if I've done that as a continuous shot. Let's wrap it up before something does catch on fire. That cable on that inverter is warm. Interestingly, 1500 watt inverter, 1616 watts. So if I can get a screenshot of that, we'll put that up on the screen there as well. So the inverter is running over its rated 1500 watts. The battery is pushing 35 amps and a smidge and change over its rated 100 amp continuous output. Now for people who would give me feedback saying it's not 100 amp out made at once, ugh, you want to have that conversation again? Let's call that done. So to summarise, we were right to have concerns about that cable sizing from the battery terminals to that box. This battery is capable, as we've just seen, of putting out 135 amps continuous. Who's going to use a battery like that? Were some of the questions that I've seen. Me. That's why people invest in lithium, because you can charge it quick, you can pull heaps of power out of it, it's lighter, so it's faster to charge, you can pull more power out of it, you can drain it down more. All of those things, all of those things are reasons people go with lithium. Sure as shit is why I go with lithium, is because I can pull sort of stuff like this. King's inverter did itself proud, and that's what I'm saying. I'm not here to hang shit on Kings. Some of their stuff is Mickey Mouse. Some of their stuff is a bit shit. Talking to somebody today, another amateur radio operator, and his comment I think summed it up. But this was designed for an AGM, not bundling with a battery that can put out 135 amps. It needs to be upgraded to handle this. That's all I'm saying. It's 30 amp cable on what effectively people know as a 50 amp plug and 30 amp fuse. It is what it is. Probably fairly difficult to pull 50 amps out of an Anderson plug, right? Anderson plugs, you normally got your fridges and your lights and things like that connected to that. So chances are you're not pulling 50 amps out of that anyway, but you need to be aware that they're rated at 30 amps. I think I did see that possibly on the website, but it needs to be here. It needs to be on the box. It needs to be on the box, or it needs to be printed on here, or a little sticker on here saying, here, printed on the bloody Anderson plug, or their waterproof connectors. 30 amps, right? And was these two feed cables that were just underrated for the capacity that you were able to pull out of that battery and that you could pull out of this. Let's say you had two 30 amp loads on this, that's 60 amps. 10 amps out of here, and it's only going to be about a half amp out of here, but 10 amps out of your Siggy plug, 30 amps on each of those, that's 70 amps. We've seen that it started to heat up already at 25 amps. Whilst this seemed to be handling the current once we tighten those connections up, if you get one of these boxes, I would say you must, and we're getting that across, go in and tighten every single terminal that's in here. Just check them. Tighten them up if need be. If they're loose, just tighten them up. Tighten them up real good, because that's their points of heat. Beyond that, look, if I was sold this with an AGM, wouldn't have an issue with it at all. I'd be, yep, Mickey Mouse, great, fit for purpose. It's just not fit for purpose for one of these batteries out of the box, if you want to use that battery to the maximum of its capabilities. If you just want to, again, just throw it in the back of your car like I've got mine, just run in the fridge, all good. Don't worry about it. Now, I'm going to upset some people here. Now, with all that said, talking about these cables being underrated for that battery, I'm going to leave those in there, because I am not going to be using this in this configuration that you set up here. The reason I bought this battery and bought this setup was to run that fridge in the back of the car. And as people pointed out, and correctly, just use it within the limits of the box and you'll be fine. If those are your requirements, you'll be fine. If you want to start running induction cooktops off it, go direct to your battery. That makes the most sense. That video that we did last week on the box, etc., was just going to be me showing you the box and showing you what it was like. I didn't expect to see... It wasn't intended to be, let's pull the box apart and pick its faults. That just wasn't going to be the case. It was going to be, look, here's a King's box. This is a good deal I got. Throwing it in the back. Going to run the fridge off that. How cool. That was the intended video. It wasn't. Once we started pulling it apart and seeing the weak points of that box, then that was what you got. Hopefully it's been a good video for you guys as a bit of a follow-up. Some of the information, some of the feedback that I was getting from people, I hate to say it, but it's clearly some people that have got information from other people off the internet, 12-volt forums, and they just don't understand how things work, and they come at you like a bull at a gate, and you're like, mate, you're just wrong. You're just wrong. Again, I'm not the 12-volt guru. I don't know everything. I can be wrong. And on some of that feedback that I sort of went, oh yeah, okay, I'll have a look at that. I'll go and check it out. Like that warning that was in that instruction manual. I didn't spot that. I just didn't spot that. The feedback that I was getting, people saying that I was wrong, is just way out there. You're just going like, you got to be trolling me. You really got to be trolling me because that information is so accurate. And therein lies the problem of being able to jump on YouTube. I mean, I'm knocking up a video. I may know nothing. And you're going out and you're watching other YouTube videos. And unfortunately, it doesn't matter what it is. Doesn't matter what the product. Doesn't matter what the scenario. Doesn't matter what the hobby. Anybody can make a YouTube video and you don't know their level of knowledge. So take it with a grain of salt. Go and confirm the information with multiple websites. Don't just trust one website. Often you'll find on technical stuff, and I found this with some medication stuff that I've had to be taken recently, that you go and check one website and you'll get some information. You'll go, right, I'm going to go and cross-reference that with somebody else. And you go to another website and it's copied and pasted from that original website. You go and check 5 different websites and they're all extractions or direct copies of that original website. It's difficult to get multiple points of view. There's so much of that on the internet, and unfortunately I think sometimes the internet makes us stupid because stupid people can post up information, other people go and read that information that's wrong and then disseminate that out and pretend, and because they think they know, they think they've got the right information. And you see it on the 12-volt forums all the time, and just people posting up just wrong information. You just try and keep your mouth shut, head down, and just stay out of it. But the problem is you've got people coming in that don't know, asking for information, and then you've got people providing them wrong information, and that's where you're getting problems. And that was the type of feedback that I was getting on that video. It's some of that wrong information that I've seen on the 12-volt forums that you go, oh, that's wrong, that's going to cause somebody some issues. And that was some of the comments that were coming at me on that last video, and you're just sort of going, yeah, be civil. Anyway, bottom line is, if you think there's something wrong here, if you've got an issue with the content, hang on, I've got to get these birds. If you've got an issue with any of this content, if you think there was anything wrong, put it in the comments. I'm happy to have a conversation with you. But do not come at me like an ass clown and tell me that I need to go back to school, that I need to, that whatever. Keep it polite, keep it respectful. I put out these videos to try and help people. But again, I'm not perfect, and I'm not saying that I am, but I believe all the information I provide you is accurate to the best of my knowledge. There may have been stuff that I've missed or something along those lines. It happens in videos. You don't get it. You don't get everything right all the time. That's it. That's the King's 100 amp hour lithium battery and box combo tests with the inverter and the tow kit induction cooker. Thanks very much for stopping by. Appreciate your views. Appreciate your comments. Appreciate your feedback, positive, negative, or otherwise. I think we've had a number of subscribers come on board relatively recently, so I want to say welcome and thank you, and we'll see you again soon. Cheers.